Hello, VOD viewers. You guys are back now, and we're through this time warping. We're almost through it. We're getting there. Fantastic. So yeah, I mean, this re-entry is going to be very spicy indeed. We're going to do a burn on the way in, for sure. And we're going to have, like, still 1,000 meters per second here. That's quite a bit still. So I'm reasonably content with that. That's going very well. This thing flying is going to be spicy, though. I'm very concerned about that. And also, the parachutes being here mean that it's mostly going to be used at the very end, because otherwise it's going to drop us tail first, which isn't necessarily what we want. So that's fine. We might have an explosion, but that would be okay. I overshot that by like 1 second, and that might actually have a fairly significant impact here, but we're going to have to do a course correction pretty much guaranteed no matter what. So we're going to come in over here and keep an eye on this. That's going to be about another 1,000 meters per second to burn here, but this encounter should be absolutely great. Our time to periapsis is dropping, which is also great. But let's slow this orbit down. Okay, about 20 seconds to go here. I'm going to drop off of the physics warp. And we'll have to fine-tune this approach. Okay. 2 meters per second. Now, I'm going to thrust limit this down to 0.5% again. There we go. And let's bring this on in. I want to get this as nailed as possible. How's that looking? A little bit more. 55 kilometers? I'm content with that. So at this point, right here, I want to put in a maneuver. That's going to be in another 4 years. I want to do a retrograde maneuver. And this is more fuel than we have. Okay. In that case, I'm going to hop around to prograde here. And we're going to use more aero braking. Okay. We're going to bring this down to 45 kilometers. That's 35. Man, that's sensitive. I was not expecting it to be that sensitive. 35 is probably okay, actually. So then right here, we'll do a retrograde burn, and that burn is going to be every ounce of fuel that we have. So we have 970 meters per second here. So 900, that's 790. 970. There we go. Every ounce of fuel that we have. And that, combined with the aero brake, in theory, should capture us. Or burn us up. One or the other. It's hard to tell. We'll find out. We'll unthrust limit these, of course. And that's all of the fuel that we'll have. We've got another big old time warp here before we find out. I'm not going to get rid of these photovoltaic panels just yet. And actually, I'm not going to time warp to that position. I want to time warp to about here. It's just a little bit safer in case I miss that, that point on the comeback. So that'll be fine. And we'll see if we manage to get ourselves captured here. We're going to have a lot of speed going through there. There's no doubt about it. You can see here, 1,000 meters per second is only that much. But that's what the aero brake is for. That's what the aero brake is for. Fingers crossed that I'm that my gut is correct on the altitude here. But at 35 kilometers, we're going to be bleeding a lot of speed, even with how aerodynamic this shape is. And we're able to pitch up or down in order to bleed a lot more speed. That will put us at risk of having parts burning off, but hopefully we don't. We have no heat shield on this thing, so there's a very good chance that things go boom here. This was always the danger, was that we go boom at this point. So let's see what ends up happening here. I mean, eventually, after this very lengthy warp. I'm going to pause the recording for the VOD, because I can actually do that. Oh, hello. Welcome back, VOD viewers. I kind of forgot about you. I forgot to unpause the recording here. We moved the maneuver node from here to here, and we threw in a little bit of normal so that our periapsis remains the same. I just want to not burn while we're in the atmosphere. I'm still expecting that we burn up on re-entry, and that this does not go well. Yeah, we're looking at like 5-6 kilometers per second hitting the atmosphere. Yikes. That's a very major yikes. I'm expecting explosions here. Definitely. That said, this is our sun relative orbital speed, isn't it? Not necessarily our Kerbin relative orbital speed, but I'm definitely expecting explosions here. That's all part of the fun. We'll see if we can manage it. 5.5 kilometers per second right now. This is not going to go well. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that this is going to go horribly. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. 6 kilometers per second now. We are going to be able to reduce it by about a kilometer per second. But it's not going to be enough, I think. We're now at 7 kilometers per second. I don't know what our Kerbin relative will be. But I do know we're not going to be in Kerbin orbit for long. Okay. Let's treat this as a late 4th of July show. Yeah, Jeb, Bill, I know you guys have been on this mission for 15 years now, but I have a sneaking suspicion you're not going to make it. 10 kilometers per second. I'm not shocked by this, for the record. I was expecting this. $40 days to go here. Remember, we're time warping to like up over here. So we'll have to warp a little bit further here. Actually, we're warping to this maneuver, aren't we? Yeah, that'll be fine. So, hi, Kerbin. We made it back to Kerbin, but, I mean, our Kerbin relative speed is only 4.2 kilometers per second. That is better. As I said, that was our Kerbal relative speed, not our Kerbin relative speed. So that is an improvement. This actually might be marginally survivable. They do look so happy. I mean, wouldn't you be happy to be home after 15 years in deep space? They're just going a little too fast. And that's just because they're so eager. So we've got ourselves 5 seconds until this burn. 3, 2, 1, and let's burn. So we're going to burn off what speed we can here, and we'll try to survive it. But I think the odds of this are low. I think the odds of me successfully landing this thing is low, too. So there's that. Okay, we're currently at about 200 kilometers here. And we're just going to burn at this attitude until we are completely out of fuel. We need to reduce our speed as much as possible. We're at about 4 kilometers per second. We can bring it down to about 3.5, which is survivable if we had bothered to include a heat shield. Without a heat shield, I think the odds are still incredibly low. They seem to have realized that something isn't quite right. I think they're looking at their fuel gauge and they're thinking, I don't know about this one. If they manage to survive and don't get captured by Kerbin with our aerobrake here, that's going to be really, really funny. Like, they're just out in deep space forever from there. That would be exciting too. So we'll just bring this on down, 1.2 or 120 meters per second left. And I mean, yeah, we're down to about 3.5 kilometers per second here. Okay. And that's the best we've got. We are going to go to radial out. And we're going to try to go in belly first. If things are getting too spicy, we'll pop over to prograde. And I fully expect... Okay, things are getting too spicy. Apparently we're popping over to retrograde. Cool. We were unable to hold that attitude. Retrograde is probably better for us. We're just going to wobble. And this is going to be pretty grim for us. But if we survive this pass and go back out, we will almost certainly be fine. But this is looking grim. So I fully expect that we're going to have issues here. If they survive, they need a human endurance medal or something. Well, maybe a Kerbal endurance medal. They are slowing down pretty dramatically at this point. Like, we're losing a lot of speed, but our heat is incredibly high. We knew that this would always be the case, but look at that. We are now officially in orbit, and that's losing a lot of speed. We might actually survive this re-entry through some miracle. I still don't necessarily expect us to survive landing, because this thing is, in my opinion, very poorly designed, and we're coming in the wrong way. But I mean, we've got drogue chutes, and then we can maybe have them bail out and use their personal chutes. That might be an option, to have them survive. We're still at about orbital speeds, to be clear. And we're not coming back out of this. Or no, we are. We're past the periapsis at this point. We're going back up. I thought that we weren't at it quite yet. But honestly, we'll have to take another pass. But that worked. And we can come in prograde with the other pass. And that'll be a lot more convenient. That's for sure. That is remarkable that worked. I have no real explanation for this. But it worked. Somehow. Well, let's flip around to prograde. And we are heading out. We're upside down right now, but that's okay. We can roll very easily. And we were captured by Kerbin due to our aerobrake. I'm actually shocked that we didn't have any parts explode there. At this point, we can warp around here and take our second aerobrake pass. Because we are officially in orbit. And that's amazing. We managed to bleed almost all of our dangerous amount of speed. Now, all we've got on this is 2 drogue chutes, because the idea is to fly it in for a landing. I don't think that's going to go well. So, we may still have Jeb and Bill bail. We'll see. Let's get oriented a bit. We have no tail fin on this either, so that's going to make our maneuvering interesting for sure. But let's go ahead and warp forward a bit, and we're hitting atmosphere now. Let's orient to prograde. And we are, at this point, almost certainly not going to be coming back out. I'm pretty sure. We're going to be down under 20 kilometers. So let's see how this goes. For now, we'll physics warp. Okay. We're seeing some heat there. I think... Is that the photovoltaic panel, or is that the cockpit that we're seeing the heating there? Moral of the story, yes, hitting the atmosphere at orbital speeds is, in fact, perfectly safe. I mean, that was well in excess of orbital speeds, to be fair. I'm going to try to pitch up here a bit, and the reason why I'm doing that, I don't want to flip over necessarily. I guess we're flipping over, but the reason that I wanted to do that was to bleed off this speed faster, and actually we're tumbling a little bit here, but this isn't so bad. This is actually good. This is spreading the heat out over the plane. I mean, sure, we're settling around to retrograde, but we can bring this around and bleed off a lot of speed. Now, we're basically out of electric charge at this moment, and I'm going to turn the SAS off because of that. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have to bring them in a slightly more special way, and by that I mean we're going to have them bail. But I think they'll be okay-ish. We're still moving very quickly, but we are a long ways away from our lowest point here, and we're bleeding speed very, very fast. Our electric charge is our biggest issue right now. We are officially out of electric charge. We could extend our solar panels, but, you know, that's not a great idea right now. Instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to continue aerobraking here and just let ourselves tumble. And we'll see what speed the drogue chutes slow us to. We're down to 1 kilometer per second here. And yeah, for now we're doing okay. We've got a lot of surface area here, so we were able to slow a lot. Okay, now it's starting to tumble a bit. This is just flying freely at the moment. And I'm going to launch those drogues. Now, this is going to pull us around to prograde. Once they open, anyway. For now, we're going to tumble a bit. But we can extend these. And are we going slow enough, do we think, to extend our solar panels? I kind of don't think so. I think we should let ourselves drop a bit more. So we're going to physics warp here and tumble. There's definitely no tangling of these cords happening at all. This is completely normal. There's no problem whatsoever here. Okay, so that pulls us around to prograde. And you can see once we dip off of prograde, our speed drops dramatically. At this point, we may want to have Bill hop out. Yes. All hatches are obstructed. Oh, they actually can't leave. I thought that there was a hatch up here for some reason. No, there is not. So they can't leave. We can't have them hop out. But what we can do here is I'm hoping that we can extend a solar panel at this point. Cool. So we have a solar panel extended, and we're trying to make our way around to prograde here. But this is working surprisingly well. Okay, I need to grab the other solar panel here. There we go. And we want to try to pull up as much as we can. Which is surprisingly a lot. Our electric charge is charging up. We're not quite able to pull all the way up. But we're doing reasonably well here. Moving at about 40 meters per second is pretty fast. They may not survive the impact here. How long have I been playing KSP? Longer than I'd care to admit. I got it when it was in alpha. I haven't been... I've never really seriously played KSP, right? But I've been playing KSP for a lot of years. So they may not survive this impact, but this is a potentially survivable impact. Although with them in the cockpit, that's a little less likely. We're trying to pull up and bleed off as much speed as we can, but this dive is the best we've got. Cut the chutes? No, the chutes are helping us here. Whoa! All we lost was the engines. Well, that happened. Boy, are Jeb and Bill happy. That, I'll be honest, there was no excuse for that to work. I really didn't think that that was going to work. But there we are. Okay, so they survived that one through a series of very, very unlikely miracles. Like, that was something along the lines of 5 or 6 consecutive miracles there, in my opinion. Okay, let's hop into the VAB and do something a little bit simpler. Although you're 15 years older now, Kerbals, you are back home. And apparently none the worse for wear. Somehow this worked. I don't know. That was insane. We're going to make ourselves a new vehicle here, and we're going to work a bit on a Parker Solar Probe analog. So let me pull up here the Parker Solar Probe. What browser did I have that in? I had it pulled up earlier. Oh, I think I reused it for the Joule atmosphere height, didn't I? Maybe. Okay, let me look it back up again. So, we're going to be making something similar to... Oh, these aren't good images. I guess the Wikipedia image is maybe like the best one. Okay, so let me hop over to display capture here. Apparently I don't have display capture in this scene. That's exciting. I wonder what display it's going to show here. We'll find out. The correct one. Fantastic. Apparently it's in HDR, but I guess that's okay. It's going to be kind of a little bit brighter, but we can see it's got this foil bit. Its comms are back here. It's got, I'm guessing these are intended to be like, at least in terms of for how we'll replicate this in Kerbal, this is probably intended to be like radiators. These would be, I think, the solar panels, although they need to be heavily protected as well. And then this would be some sort of a sun shield, I'm guessing. I don't know too much about how the Parker Solar Probe is engineered, but it would be something along the lines of that. Okay, so let me get rid of that display capture. There we go. Oh, thank you very much for the 2 pounds, Unisol, for sustaining Kerbal life. Honestly, I'm not sure I can take credit for that. I'm really not sure that I can take credit for that one. But we'll make something kind of similar here. I mean, there's the Hex 2, but I don't really think that's what we're going for here. Although, we could definitely have the Hex 2 be that, like, foil portion. As I refer back to this, let me put it on another monitor here. So, it's really, like, double length. I think isn't there a DLC for a, like, a foil or not really fairing, but, like, if we go to a decoupler... what do they call it? The gray and orange, black and white metal. Yeah, that's not really what I'm looking for. It seems like there's a DLC option for a foil section. I mean, the Probodobodyne Hex 2 is kind of that. If we wanted to have it be quote-unquote correct in terms of size, we would need like 2 of these, which I feel like is overkill, and this is not really the size that I'm looking for anyway. But this would be like a foil fuel tank, really. So it would be kind of like these external fuel tanks, like the donuts. But we would be looking for one that is... Let's see. What size is this? Okay. So it's slightly larger than the 1.25 meters. But it's probably slightly smaller than the 2.5 meters. Yeah. So that's a little awkward for sure. We could use like baguettes to try to simulate it. I don't know. That's probably not the best concept. But if we were to do something like this isn't exactly foil. So we would want to have like, we would use like the Hex 2 here. What is the, well, we know that we need a comm system on it. The comm system went around here-ish. About like that on there. And then the solar panels, which we're not going to be able to have like the radiators or like they have very special solar panels, right? To be able to be resistant to that amount of sun. So we would need to have this be, we could try to simulate that with like these photovoltaic panels, but their solar panels that they have on there are much shorter, much flatter, like more like the 3x2s in terms of their shape, except that they're like 2x3s, right? Which I don't think KSP stock has anything that's that size. We could maybe go with these to try to emulate it a little bit. Now, these are circular, as opposed to the rectangular ones on the Parker Solar Probe. But this would probably do the trick. Okay, so they then have some scientific instruments, I'm guessing, up here, inside of the radiators. So we would have something kind of similar. We would put in the payload. We'd probably put in a service bay, something kind of like this, right? Although theirs is maybe a little bit taller than this. That's probably fine. As far as the caps go, I don't think it really matters. We can have no cap in there for now, and that would be fine. As far as the science experiments go, what is even in the Parker Solar Probe for experiments? Let's see here. Instruments. They've got an electromagnetic field investigator. Let's see. Something to measure energetic electrons, protons, heavy ions. A wide field imager. Okay, so they have electromagnetic field. We could emulate that with something like... the press map barometer would be funny. But no, not really anything like that. For the Integrated Science Investigation of the Sun instrument, that measures electrons, protons, and ions. So we'd probably want like an ionographer of some sort for that one. We could go... Well, the ionographer is... That's the fluid spectrovariometer. Where's the ionographer? Surface scanning. Is that only a deployable science? Maybe. We could go with like a magnetometer. That's a possibility. Now that would really have to be mounted like... Okay, that's not exactly where I want that. But that would really have to be mounted somewhere else. We could have the magnetometer. I mean, the electromagnetic fields investigation does contain 2 magnetometers, so we could have 2 magnetometers on here to emulate that, kind of like this. And then the next one would be basically an ionographer, which I think I'm going to emulate with a negative gravioli detector. Something like that. And then for solar wind, counting electrons, protons, helium atoms, they've got electrostatic analyzers in that. So what would we use for that? Electrostatic analyzers, huh? A spectrovariometer, perhaps? That would be a similar sort of thing. Now, this requires an atmosphere, but we can pretend that we're within the Kerbal atmosphere, because that's kind of the way that works, actually. So that could work for that. As far as the wide field imager goes... We could have some sort of a camera device. This guy's really big, and I'd rather not include that. We could just bring a thermometer because, you know, we need to measure the temperature of the sun and call that good. I want this thing to be... We could mount it, like, on the side here. Actually, no, we can't. We could mount it... Let's just open this guy up. And we could mount that... Almost. I think it's upside down. Let's go ahead and put the caps back on. Solid caps. There we go. We'll move that up, and we'll move this guy out. There we go. Putting the solid caps back, we can put that in over here, and the thermometer would go over here. Something kind of like that. Okay, and then we would need... Actually, I think that's about it for the instruments that we would need to emulate this. So that would be fine. Now we would need some fuel and propulsion. How is this thing actually propelled? Well, let's take a look here quick. Just checking. Spacecraft. Yes, protected by a solar shield. We'll get to that. A white reflective alumina surface layer minimizes absorption. Yes, but what is the actual propellant that they're using for it? It uses reaction wheels to turn. Yes. Let's see. Uses pump fluid cooling. This doesn't actually say what it has for propulsion. Okay. It's probably in here somewhere that I'm just not seeing it. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely not seeing it. Let's re-enable this. This is very bright. I apologize. It's due to HDR incompatibilities. But I'm just looking through the Wikipedia page here, trying to find if they say what propels this thing. Yeah, interplanetary gravity assist. It was launched on a Delta IV Heavy. Yes. Just checking here. I know that they use multiple gravity assists for a more direct flight path, which can be powered by solar panels. Yes. So, are we just going to say that this is like, going to be ion propelled? Because I'm not actually seeing what propellant they're using here. They have to have some form of propellant, right? But it's just not showing up here. So, I guess I could... I guess I could Google that directly. Parker Solar Probe propulsion system. Yeah, what do we got? Aerojet Rocketdyne propulsion plays a critical role in all aspects. Yeah, sure. They call it solar powered, but our thrusters are the same model as those that helped steer New Horizons. Okay. So, they're using thrusters with 685 kilograms of fuel. Okay, so just regular old thrusters. Cool. Yeah, RCS. That's likely what this is. So that's fine. We can use that. So we can do some RCS propulsion. That's too small of a tank to really... That's too big to really fit here. And that's about the right size. So I would have like 2 of these. And then looking at the image of the probe here, I think... Oh, I closed it. That's perfect. Well, looking at the image of the probe, I think that the propulsion would have been down here. It just wasn't there in the image. So we're going to use RCS propulsion here, and we are really just monoprop propulsion. We could use like these linear RCS ports. It uses reaction wheels to orient, so it does not use RCS for that. We've got reaction wheels in this Hex too. And I'm interested in seeing what the rating is on this, 2G. We might actually want to get a bigger antenna than that. Something like this guy. And that's more representative of what was in the image, although it should be mounted like down here for the positioning purposes. Okay, and then we were going to use these monoprop ports, or these monoprop engines rather. Maybe not those engines, but some monoprop engines. Let's see here. RCS thrusters. Just the place anywheres? Or this guy? This guy'd probably be better. So we could do like 4 of these, or maybe even more. We could do like an engine plate. And that would be like an EP12. Have at least 4 X1s. So RCS. And I mean, I guess that's not strictly speaking necessary because these don't actually attach to the engine plate. So we could get rid of that and save some weight. Directly have these on here. Kind of like that-ish. Although I'd want to... Okay, we don't have any options there. I'd want to drop these down to be more like here. Okay. Now I wonder what kind of thrust to weight that would actually have. This, of course, doesn't say anything because they're monoprop, but it would probably be okay. We would then need I would like to cover this with foil, but I don't think there's any real way to do that in KSP stock that I know of anyway. If you guys know of a way to do that, that would be great to know, but we may not be able to do that. I'm just checking through all of these real quick here to see if there's anything that looks similar. Yeah, I don't see anything there. So for now, what we'll do is we're going to grab ourselves some small radiators here, like these. And we're going to have like 6 of those. We'll have to replace our magnetometer's location, and I'm going to replace that down to, I think, here for now. And then we'll have these guys go in. There will be 6 of those, I believe. Or do we want 8? One or the other. I think 8 gives better coverage. So something along the lines of this, although, oh, that's a little awkward. That is definitely not the angling that we wanted. I wanted to rotate this manually anyway. So something kind of like this, and then we needed to have this like cone outward. So let me just grab this and move it over so it's a little more centered. And then we wanted these to cone outward somewhat. So have them be a little bit more like this. And then move them up a little bit to be more like that. Can we change the color on these? We can make them compact, we can make them flat, but we can't change the color. Okay, that's fine. So those radiator panels would go there, and then we'd need the sun shield. So, how do we want to do the sun shield? We could just have a giant heat shield on here. This would need to be spaced out a little bit, and we would not really want that to be black. We would prefer that it be white. There's not really a good option for that for the ablative heat shields, which are of course not meant for this. And then there's this guy, which is hilariously large. He would do the trick, but that is definitely bigger than we need. We could simply try to do it with a fairing. That's an option. So we would use like a 1.25 meter fairing here, and then have that come out about like this-ish. We might need to have it come up a bit. Okay, that works. And then have it come in about like that. That could work. That's approximately the size of the heat shield, right? Let me double check that. Parker Solar Probe. It's a little bigger than that, I think. So we would probably end up going with, instead of this, we would end up going with like a 2.5 meter variant. And we want that to be a little bit higher. So let's go ahead and put in like a modular girder segment here. That's way too big. Like a cubic octagonal strut instead. And I'd want to get that attached properly here. We might need to remove these for the time being. There we go. Something kind of like that. And then this fairing would end up being... Oh, that's awkward. Let's edit that fairing. Bring that down. There. More like that. So, I mean, that fairing is... Yeah, we want it to be just white. That fairing would be acting as the sun shield. Then we would want to have these guys put back on, and I think I am going to go for 6. They were overlapping a little bit more than I wanted them to when we had 8. So we'll just position them here, and then we'll bring this up to be about here. I'd like to move them in a little bit. About like that. And then rotating them to be kind of like this, and they need to come out now. That's too few, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and take those off and put them on in 8x symmetry. Okay. They get a little bit spaced out up here, but that's, I think, reasonably fine. They're a little overlapped. But again, I think that's reasonably fine. Then we bring this guy down, and this is emulating our sun shield. Okay, now they have a bunch of like antennas and stuff sticking out the back. Honestly, this Communitron basically does that for us. So there's that. And then our photovoltaic panels aren't exactly the same. I'd like to have these RCS fuel tanks be foil covered, but unfortunately that's not really an option. What I want to know at this point is what kind of delta V do we get out of this? We do have another option. We could ditch the monoprop, and we could go for like, maybe not necessarily Twitch, but like Twitch, Ant, things like that, and use like baguette tanks. Those would be more foil, but they aren't like the straight line that we would be looking for. They would work a little bit better in terms of looking at delta V though. Let's go ahead and remove this and put this over here for the time being, and we can think about that. So for the fuel tanks, that would be using things like the donut. Something like that. And then maybe like baguettes down the middle, or even just baguettes attached more along the lines of, what direction do we want that? More along the lines of this, although we wouldn't want that many of them. Something kind of like that-ish, but we'd need to move them, of course, and have them be located more like this. That gives us the right material for this section of the probe. And the question is, if we were to propel this with like these Ant engines. Now, I doubt that these are located exactly where they need to be. I probably do want to snap those. Yeah, you can see they're pretty angled. We don't necessarily want that. We want these guys to be basically where they're supposed to be. Another option would be to radially attach them, and honestly, to radially attach like spiders, that might be an easier way to do it. Like that. Okay, and then we would reattach the antenna, and we could just put that like upside down over here. No, I hate it. That is not where that goes. Okay. It clips. I don't love it. That's a little bit better. That's more like where that's supposed to go. Not exactly, but we don't have to be quite as precise, of course. As far as the magnetometers go, I think that I am going to include them inside of the science portion. We could have those go 6 or 8 symmetry. No, we're going to go with 2. Actually, I am going to include them back here. Okay. So it would be something kind of like this, right? And I mean, this would give us 1698 meters per second, allegedly. Now, we would want this to be separate. There we go, 1572. This thrust to weight on Laythe. Right. Let's have that be on Kerbin. 0.58 at surface level. 0.64 and 1754 meters per second. That's pretty good. So, I mean, this is obviously not really a functional heat shield, but it kind of approximates the heat shield size and shape. Kind of. Okay, so at this point, we would need to put this thing on a vehicle. Now, this launched in real life on a Delta IV Heavy. So, Delta IV Heavy. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, so that's one of those bad boys. Right. So, let me just pull this open here, and I'll show you guys. I want to open image. That is not the image that I thought it was. Okay. That is a cropped version of the image. Let's bring this back, and yeah, this is the full version of the image. So open image. There we go. So a Delta IV Heavy is this guy. So we can see here that we've got, we can approximate this with like 3 big orange tanks. Then there's like some this is like going down into the engines down here. They've got this like interstage here, but I'm pretty sure this doesn't actually stage. And then they've got this up here, which is like extended tanks. Nose cones. This would then be the stage 2. And then this would be like the payload fairing. This is, I think, a tall fairing variant. We probably don't need our fairing to be that tall, but we'll make something kind of similar to that. And we can see them strutted together right here. Nice. Okay, so we'll hop back over into KSP and put this thing in something fairly similar. Let me move that over to another monitor here where I can actually see it as we're making this. Cool. So first thing we need is an attach point down here. That's going to be interesting. So I think what we're going to do for now is we're going to put a TD12 decoupler. We're going to attach it here. And then physically move it down if we can. Can we move it down any further than that? No. Okay. So we might have to do some part clipping here to make this actually work. We can put like a modular girder segment inside of here. This is going to be interesting. Inside of here? That's not exactly where we need that, but that's okay, perhaps. I want that to be clipped on, or rather attached on like this. Snapped on. That's the word I'm looking for. So instead, we could have these move out over here. I want this to be rotated like... not like that. Rotated about like this, and then we'll move them in and clip them in a little bit. So we would have them be attached kind of like that. I wish that we could scale this part and just like on the X and Y axes and keep the length, because the length works for us, but as it is, that's a little exciting. Let's go ahead and strut these together out here, just to be safe like that. Okay, and I wouldn't mind strutting them here as well. Okay, something kind of like that. Then we could put in our decoupler. Now, the Delta IV Heavy, that's like a 2.5 meter fairing, right? So we're going to need to do something about that. We're going to have an adapter here. And we may not want to have this be a fuel adapter. We would want this to be like a... something kind of like this. Now that is a fuel adapter. And that's not necessarily what I want here. I want a much lighter adapter. I mean, we could go with an NCS, but that's probably not great. We could just go with a Rockamax brand. That would work. Now, this is not really going to be seen very much. And then we would want to have our fairing here. So we'll put in a 2.5 meter fairing. Like so. And this is mostly just going to be a tall boy. We're going to need it a little wider than this, though, to accommodate the sun shield. So we'll bring that up. I think that's... yeah, that should be sufficient. It doesn't want to build it there, but it'll allow it here. Okay. And then we'll just blunt that off, about like so. Now, this second fairing in here is a little awkward, but it doesn't actually stick through. So this fairing is not as tall as a lot of like Delta IV Heavy fairings, but we don't need it to be all that tall. So that'll be fine. Let's start working on our second stage here. And looking at the actual vehicle here, this second stage is basically an X-32. So it's basically one of these guys. And then we'll propel that with like a poodle. This is not exactly a Vulcan upper stage, but it's fine. We'll propel that like so. And then we would do a TD25 decoupler here. And now, looking at this, what they have here is basically another X232, but it's orange. Then they have another one, but it's white. And then they have what looks to me like a single big orange tank. Like this, although This would have to be compressed if this was the case. This is the wrong size, so these would need to be like X16s. More along the lines of that. Looking at the scale here, that's about correct. Approximately. And then they've got like one additional of these 16s down here before the engine. About like that. Is approximately what we're looking at. This is not the right proportions for the fairing, but that's okay. And then I would lift this with a mainsail, ideally. What is that thrust to weight? Honestly, even without the heavy portion, that's a decent thrust to weight. This could lift as is without making it be a heavy. But it was lifted with a Delta IV heavy, so we would then couple on... Where's the attach point? I'm guessing the attach point is somewhere in this tank. I don't know that for a fact. And then this stack is essentially duplicated for the outside portions. So then we'd have a 600 here, or a 216 rather. This would be a white buoy, and then we'd have an orange buoy up here. And then another, well, basically just this. Like that. Cool. Have that be like orange-gray shroud. I think that looks slightly better. And then we would need to have our aerodynamic nose cone on here. Like that. Now, theirs are not necessarily this far apart. So we would maybe not use this radial decoupler. We would maybe use more like this radial decoupler. Attach that on like so. Is that correct height-wise? That looks very close to correct height-wise. I think that we need to drop this tank ever so slightly. I would actually have to turn snapping off. Something kind of like that. Okay. Then we know that they have struts for a fact because we saw them. The struts are up, let's see, just checking here, right below the nose cone. Or kind of on the nose cone, actually. Looking at that. I'm going to put it right below the nose cone, and they connect it from like middle to middle almost. Kind of like that. Not quite. That's a little bit extreme, but from like here to here. And then from like here to about, let's see here. Here? Yeah, about like that. I don't see other struts at the bottom, but I'm going to duplicate that down here. Just to be on the safe side, I will put it from here to here, and then from here to here. Okay. I wonder how safe this will be decoupling with these tanks so close together. But that's very similar to a Delta IV Heavy right there. A Delta IV Heavy definitely has a narrower fairing than this. I'm actually going to try to rebuild that. Let's try to bring that in and have that be a little bit narrower. Can we have that be basically straight up here? And coming kind of like that. That's clipping through. So we're going to have to try that again and have that be a little bit wider. Okay, how's that? That's not clipping through. Cool. So that's basically our Delta IV Heavy here. And that looks about right, honestly. If we take a look at the reference image, it's a little pointier on the top. That's definitely something that we can adjust. And the fairing here is a little bit taller relative to the rest of the rocket, but I'm not too concerned about that. Yeah, I do think I'd want to adjust the fairing pointiness here. We'll just edit that and we'll make that a little less blunt because that is definitely pointier. That's not what we're going for sure. We'll try that again. Edit that fairing and bring that down to be a bit more like that. It's not exactly pointy, but it's a little bit pointy-er. Cool. So that's, I think, fundamentally a Parker Solar Probe right there. So we'll go ahead and call that the Parker Solar Probe. And I don't know that we're going to be able to pull off the gravity assists the way that they do in real life. I'm not entirely sure how we'd want to do that. Well, for one thing, we'd have to launch at a very specific window, which we're not going to do here. We're probably just going to bring this guy in and call that good. But let's go ahead and launch this. I'm a little bit concerned about our separation of our side stages, but in theory... Oh, another thing we definitely need here. These are liquid-fueled side stages. We should definitely put in external fuel ducts between them. We're just going to do something kind of like that. Cool. So we drain from these side tanks first, and then the center tank. Okay. That should work. Now, we're not going to be able to light ourselves on fire first, the way that the Delta IV Heavy does, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and launch this. And hope that we don't have any immediate explosions on the pad. That can sometimes happen with parts clipped together. Are we good? I don't know. We're still loading. Okay. I think we're good. SAS on, throttle up. Now, our thrust to weight here is going to be pretty insane, isn't it? This is showing 1.51. I'm not sure how accurate that is. If that is accurate, then that's fine. We'll keep an eye on that as we lift off. Oh, yeah, this staging is completely broken. Let's go ahead and fix that staging quick. Let's see here. These fairings would be done separately. Okay, 1.82. That's more like it. So we're going to launch at like 80-ish% thrust. Okay. Well, let's go. And off we go. I'm going to go ahead and start pitching over. Technically, this is yawing over. I never build the rockets correctly to pitch over. But that's fine. Okay. Throttling up to full at this point. We've got lots of thrust to weight, but the fairing should mean that we have no real concerns about going too quickly. Cool. And I'm just trying to angle us over a little more aggressively, since I know I tend to go too high and not sideways fast enough. Okay. We'll just lock to prograde from here. We've picked up a little bit of a roll, but I can fix that. And our side boosters are going to be detaching in about 15 seconds. Moment of truth on this Delta IV Heavy. We'll see if that detachment ends up working. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're good. Fantastic. So we're plenty high at this point. We can head on over to the horizon, which we will happily do. And I don't want to go back to prograde. I just want to hold here for the moment. We'll get as much horizontal speed as we can, but we were basically lifted into orbital height by those boosters. So that's great. That is, of course, the joys of a rocket like a Delta IV Heavy. We're just going to keep burning horizontally here until we are at about 100 kilometers. That'll be fine. And there we go. Now we can ditch this fairing. It is no longer necessary. And fantastic. There's our probe exposed to not quite the vacuum of space yet, but it will be soon. And we're going to circularize this orbit. Cool. And let's head on over to that maneuver node. We're going to have a bit of a hard time turning all of this for right now, but that's fine. Okay. We're now officially in space, so let's extend our solar panels. There we go. We may end up being slightly blocked by our sun shield here, but that's kind of the point, if I'm honest. The sun shield is intended to block the sun. So that'll be good. We'll go ahead and warp forward a little bit as we prepare for entering orbit. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and 0. So this is easily going to get us into orbit. I mean, I knew that when I saw that this alone was 1.51 thrust to weight. I knew that for this particular implementation of the Parker Solar Probe, the Delta IV Heavy was a little overkill. But that's fine. I don't know what the actual mass was compared to our mass. The actual mass was, I think, 3,500 kilograms. I don't know what our mass was. I didn't look at that. But it must be less than that. Or, well, there's just differences, right? So that'll be fine. This is just fine for our orbit. Yeah, we can hold here. That's okay. And at this point, we want to gravity assist our way to as low of an orbit over Kerbal as possible. That's the idea here. So, for now, we want to gravity assist our way out of the Kerbin system. That's easy enough. We can go somewhere around... Actually, this is basically a correct time here to burn it right now, but we can do something kind of like this. And get ourselves an escape for about 835 meters per second. Probably not the most efficient on the planet, but it'll do. That's actually a pretty good periapsis there. So that'll do. We will head around to that. That will burn most of this stage out, so that's good. But we've got plenty of extra fuel here. Like, we have a crazy amount of fuel, actually. This is way more than we need. For the record, it's a lot harder to do this in real life. We're going to warp around. We're going to do one orbit here. And yeah, I mean, we've got another 7,000 meters per second to do this. We probably don't even need to do the gravity assists, but we will. Regardless, that'll be fine. And let's begin our Mooner injection orbit burn here in just a moment. 2, 1, and 0. Okay. So we're still going to have juice in this tank once we are done with this burn. Like, a Delta IV Heavy is pretty overkill for this particular payload. At least in Kerbal. 8 seconds of burn time left here. And... okay, we'll call that good. No mech jeb? Nope, I'm not using mech jeb currently. I have in the past, but I'm currently not. Oh, this is a very awkward encounter. We are going to push our way out. And there we go. Cool. So we'll warp our way out of the Kerbin system. We've got our gravity assist done. And thank you for the assistance, Moon. It's much appreciated. And then we're going to want to try to gravity assist into the sun, which I think means we want to come in retrograde? Yeah, we want to come in retrograde and use the gravity to slow ourselves down rather than coming in prograde like we are here and using the gravity to speed ourselves up. That's the way we want to do it. Okay. That's going to be interesting, but should be fine. We'll warp around up over this way. Now, we're not going to have the timings to do the repeated gravity assist slowdowns that the actual Parker Solar Probe did. That's fine. We're not going to be able to completely replicate that. But we'll just make our way out of here. And when do we leave? Around here? That's fine. So the next thing that we want is an Eve encounter. And we want to come in... actually, we probably should have launched retrograde here, shouldn't we have? Now that I think about it. That would have made more sense for the excess fuel. Flipping this around at this point would be interesting. Okay, let's see what we can get done here. So if we wanted to gravity assist by Eve, which in reality it did gravity assist by Venus before... Oh yeah, we're control locked. That is, of course, because we have not extended our antenna. Where is our antenna? I know I included an antenna on this. Did I not put it back on? Am I dumb and didn't put the antenna back on? I may not have put the antenna back on. Okay. Exciting. Well, we could launch it into a retrograde orbit then. Let's go ahead and take this back to vehicle assembly. We do need that antenna. And let me check to see if Parker Solar Probe launched retrograde or not. I'm not entirely certain. Launcher trajectory. Let's take a look at that. Wikipedia, sure, that'll be fine. Trajectory. Gravity assists at Venus to incrementally decrease its orbital perihelion to achieve a final altitude of approximately 8.5 solar radii. Yeah. The trajectory requires high launch energy. Yes. Interplanetary gravity assists. Yes. It doesn't say whether they launched retrograde or not, but that would probably make things easier. Okay, I can't believe I actually forgot to put the antenna back on. That makes me very sad. The antenna was about here, upside down. There we go. Yes. That's the way it was supposed to be. Cool. So we'll try this again, and I'm going to launch it retrograde this time, because I think that would help matters. And it does take extra energy to get into orbit retrograde. So that makes sense why it was the Delta IV Heavy then. So that'll be fine. Let's go ahead and launch that guy, and we'll see how this goes. It always feels weird to me to launch retrograde. I don't know why. Well, actually I know why. It's because you're giving up like 1,200 meters per second. For no real reason. Oh, right. This is all still broken, isn't it? Let's revert that to the launch and change our staging here. That would help. Come on, KSP. You can do it. Sorry, Kerbals, we had to abort the flight because we forgot one antenna. Yes, that is absolutely true. So our staging here is absolutely broken, and we need to fix this. Let's actually revert this back to the VAB so it'll stay fixed, rather than just fixing it for this flight. So let's do that quick, and we want this to burn in the first stage. We want this to decouple here. This decouple can happen here. This fairing we will manually stage, and then that decouples, and yeah, that's all good now. So our staging is now great. Just double checking it one last time. Yes. Okay. We have our antenna. We have our staging. We're going to launch retrograde this time. And it's going to be exciting. That does mean that we're not going to be able to use a lunar gravity assist, because that would actually slow us down going retrograde, if I'm understanding that correctly. I think. We can check it and double check that I have my brain wrapped around this. We'll see. Okay, so off we go, and this time we're going to go this way. It's going to be super weird. Look at that. We're going back towards the KSC. But we're launching retrograde. About a 30-second delay from sending to receiving messages. Yeah, unfortunately, that's just endemic to streaming on YouTube in 4K 60. That's a limitation of the platform, and there's not anything I can do about it. Sorry. Okay, we're going to go to prograde. And we'll just roll that a bit. And about 30 seconds left in these tanks here. So yeah, this will be good. We're going a lot more flat trajectory here, and that's actually a good thing too. But we are going to burn more fuel going retrograde than we ever were prograde. So that'll be fine. Bombing KSC. Unfortunately, we are past the KSC before we deploy, so no bombing happening there. Okay. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. There's that separation. Not as clean as I would have liked. That was a little sketchy, but it looks okay. And they impacted back there. That's fine. We don't care about them impacting back there. So we definitely have a lot more horizontal speed than vertical speed this time, and that's a good thing too. We're going to punch up until our apoapsis height is about 100. Oh, we drifted a little bit off of the node there, but we got it back under control. Yeah, we've got a little bit of a wobble here, but I think it's okay. But retrograde will definitely cost us quite a bit more to put it into orbit. Okay, there's 100 kilometers. And, man, that feels weird. We're going this way, not this way. Okay. I rarely launch retrograde or polar. I should probably do polar more. But we'll just push this out, and... Is that in a wacky inclination? No, not really. Okay. Pull that back ever so slightly. That's close enough. Cool. We can ditch our fairing at this point. That is no longer necessary. I'm not going to deploy any of this until we're out of the atmosphere, though. But that launch definitely took a little bit more energy, which was fully expected. Now we're fully out of the atmosphere. I'll remember to extend the antenna that we remembered to include this time, and our solar panels. Eventually, we're going to want to activate those radiators, probably, but for now, it's okay. We'll go ahead and warp forward about 2 minutes here. Okay. And let's get into orbit. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. There we go. Now we can try a gravity assist around the moon and see what happens with it retrograde, which I'm interested in seeing. I don't think I've ever tried that before to see what exactly that ends up doing. We'll see. 150, 100, 50, and good enough. Cool. So if we were to attempt to do a gravity assist around the moon, of course, it's going to push out this way. Wacky. Yep, that's exactly what I expected it to do. Cool. So you do eye orbits now, or what do you look at? Also, is it always necessary to orbit before heading out? No, it is not always necessary to orbit before heading out. I do that because I don't actually time my launches. That's something that you can definitely do if you want to be more efficient. But yeah, this retrograde gravity assist is not a gravity assist at all. It's hurting us. So that's what we wanted. That's good. So I do eyeball orbits at this point. Yes, I don't really use MechJeb for any of that stuff anymore. I do that all manually. But no, it is absolutely not necessary. And in fact, it is not efficient to always enter orbit and circularize your orbit before heading out. But it is easier to eyeball orbits if you're doing it that way. So we can get ourselves an escape here. It's about 100 more meters per second since we can't do our gravity assist, but that's fine. It's not like we're short on that. And we're going to be heading retrograde. So we're going to be going this direction now. Yeah, you can see here. We may actually want to change the time at which we do this to be like around over here instead. Does that not get us an escape? Oh, that gets us an encounter. We don't necessarily want that encounter. Let's not do that. That's still an encounter. It's also still an escape. Oddly, it's not showing the next patch conics, probably because of the encounter. But let's grab this and try to make that not be an encounter. Thank you very much. There we go. That's much better. Previously, when we were burning on the other side, it was pushing our orbit outward. Now the burn is pushing our orbit inward. See? So we can actually get escaped from Kerbin and get to an orbit of here, like an Eve orbit-ish, an Eve encounter adjacent, if we had it timed correctly, with only 1,000 meters per second. So that is much better. Now, we could time this. If we were to set Eve as our target and bring this in a little bit more, ever so slightly more. Yeah, you can see here, we're at basically the exact wrong time to launch this, and our inclination would be weird as well. If we wanted to delay this, like a really, really freaking long time, we could. I don't think that's useful. So instead, all I'm going to do is I'm not going to push this out quite as far as we could. And we're just going to bring it in to about here. And we'll do a Eve encounter for slowing down soon enough. If we had timed it correctly, this would have been an encounter here. And we would have been able to use that to gravity assist and still exit Eve, but come down and be like here. And then ideally that would have caused us to encounter Moho here. And then gravity assisted that. And then that would bring us in, you know, something like this. And then once we're here, we could burn our apoapsis down. That would be the way that, or that would be similar to the way that the Parker Solar Probe did it. Now, the way that the Parker Solar Probe did it was they timed it so that they launch at their periapsis, they encounter Venus, and then they come in, and then they come back out, and then they encounter Venus again at some point. I'm not sure how many orbits that took, but they encounter Venus again, and then that brings them in, and then they encounter Venus again out over like this way, and then that brings them in even closer, and so on and so forth. It's a really clever orbit, and I'm not going to attempt to emulate it. And I don't even know that it can be emulated in KSP. But it did require a fair amount of fuel to make that happen. So it probably could be emulated, but I'd have to really understand the nitty-gritties of how that orbit worked a little bit better. I don't pretend to truly understand the Parker Solar Probe orbit. So we're just going to approximate it here. Spiraling versus direct? Probably, yeah. That's probably a good way to put it. But yeah, overall, that's the way that the Parker Solar Probe orbit, that's the effect that it has. I don't pretend to understand how it achieves all of that. I don't know where burns would happen and things like that. I'd have to study that all out before I would really attempt to emulate it. We're just going to try to do something similar here. So our burn is going to be in 20 seconds. 3, 2, 1, now. Cool. To be clear, the orbit of the Parker Solar Probe is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But we're going to head in here and get all of this burnt. This is going to be our escape velocity here. And we'll still have a little bit in this for our inclination change. Although, are we going to need an inclination change? Probably. Now, to be clear, the Parker Solar Probe, as far as I'm aware, doesn't gravity assist at all off of... Do I have a mod list somewhere? Yes, it's on my latest KSP videos, but I can just tell you. Actually, let me fire up CCAN here, and I'll just show you. Apparently, CCAN doesn't want to fire up quickly. There's a new version available. Not now. It doesn't actually matter. Okay. So... Oh, thank you for updating, RogueTech. Okay. Let's hop over here and I'll show you the mod list real quick before we get back to that. So basically all this is oh, the HDR is so awful. Okay, so I apologize for it being a little washed out here, but basically all I'm using is X-Science, environmental visual enhancements. I'm using Kerbal Engineer Redo. I'm using Restock and Restock Plus and their requirements. That's all we've got. That's the entire list. So it's vanilla-ish, like vanilla extended. Okay, so back to what I was saying about the Parker Solar Probe. I've forgotten what I was saying about the Parker Solar Probe. Perfect. So the descending node is going to be our next point, I believe. Let's see, that's 299, 66 days. Actually, we are going to be here first. So we'll add that maneuver there. And we are going to... Why am I burning retrograde here? Retrograde is absolutely not the way to go. We want to go anti-normal. Okay. 2, 1, and 0. Cool. So that will put us on the same inclination of Eve. Oh, I remember what I was saying about the Parker Solar Probe. I was saying I'm not sure if there's any plan or has ever been any gravity assists with Mercury as opposed to Venus. I know that they've been doing repeated gravity assists of Venus. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that one. But we're probably going to use Moho as well. Okay, so we're going to head in over here and begin our warp. Cool. Now we launched retrograde of Kerbin, but we didn't actually enter into a retrograde orbit here. But that's fine. So we're going to bring this down. Just warping forward a little further. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and inclination change. So we're able to do the entire inclination change still on the center core of the Delta IV Heavy, even with launching retrograde. That's a little insane. Okay, how are we doing there? Yeah, that's good enough. So at this point, I would like to, sometime around the periapsis, I would like to intercept Eve. I'm not sure when would be the best time for that. Not then, that's for sure. More like over here-ish. Ish. Okay, we're going to need to get a little bit more retrograde in there. We'll have to add an orbit, it looks like. And this happens, of course, because I didn't bother timing my transfer window. And let's just be able to move that. There we go. And now we'll add an orbit here. And bring this back a bit. And we'll have to move this up a bit. Okay. Awkward, but doable. Yeah, that's definitely a next orbit sort of thing. But this then, you can see, this is a gravity assist right now that does bring our periapsis down pretty regularly. So this sort of thing is what the Parker Solar Probe is doing right now. Every time it encounters Venus, in our case Eve, the periapsis is lowered a little bit more. And it just gets closer and closer and closer to the sun that way. So that's the way that it works. Now, we are probably going to, for the sake of brevity here... Oh, that is such a beautiful encounter. Look at that. That is amazing. That's exactly the kind of encounter that we want to get. So we're going to want to burn a little bit harder here to make that encounter even more efficient. So let's see here. We want to bring this in like so. Well, actually, a little bit retrograde. That's starting to go back up. But yeah, that's the kind of encounter that is happening there. What we want, I think, is for this periapsis, if I'm understanding this correctly, for this periapsis to come down here. The periapsis is pushing that out a bit. Maybe just change the timing, honestly. But yeah, it's this sort of encounter. Right here. Cool. And then they just do repeated encounters out over here. And it just keeps lowering. We're probably not going to continue that, but we got one encounter here, and we may attempt to get another one. Just joined, what you doing? We are currently doing kind of a quasi-simulation of the Parker Solar Probe here. We built a facsimile of the Parker Solar Probe and a Delta IV Heavy to launch it on, and the Delta IV Heavy definitely didn't last as long in reality, but we're doing a kind of similar flight profile where we're using an encounter with Eve here to drop our Sun periapsis down, and I'm hoping that we're going to get more encounters like this. I'm not entirely convinced on this because the timing is, you know, wacky, but We'll see. We've only got 78 meters per second left in the center core of the Delta IV Heavy, but we've got this entire second stage here still. Like, we have so much fuel. So we need to warp around a little bit here because I didn't launch at the correct time, but that's fine. Okay. We've got ourselves our jank sun shield. But it'll do the trick, ultimately. And we're going to want to be pointed radial out as we approach the sun, because that is, well, actually, can we target the sun? I don't think so. We can focus it. And that clears the target. Okay. Yeah, just wanted to check that. Because if we could target it, pointing at target would be ideal. I want to grab Eve here. Focus Eve. We can do that once we're done with this time warp. That's fine. No big deal. So we've got ourselves our tiny little Parker solar probe. And it's got its radiators, which are not on at the moment. It's not getting enough heat to need that. So we're not too concerned yet. 100 days left here. 70 days. Another thing that I might want to do on a stream sometime... Oh, look at that. There's a planetary body that was right over here. I don't know if you could see that. It was barely visible for me. And then it vanished. I don't know where it went. But another thing that I might be interested in doing on a stream sometime is building a James Webb Space Telescope. That would be a little nuts. Okay, so we're going to be ready for this burn in about a minute here. That's definitely not a today project. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's burn. Okay, finally getting rid of the center core of that Delta IV Heavy about a year into the mission. And we've got so much fuel in this upper stage. I believe they call these Centaur upper stages, if I recall correctly. I don't believe they use a Poodle engine, though, just to be clear. So off we go. About 400 meters per second to go here. But yeah, having like the whole thing folded up and then unfolding it. I don't know what we'd use for the hexagonal panels, but I'm sure we could come up with something. You could definitely do that with the robotics parts in the DLCs. So that would be a doable thing. I don't know how I would also do the sun shield for that. That's basically a fabric in reality. Okay, let's just get this burnt down a little bit. This last little bit. Cool. There we go. Okay, so this is now our periapsis here. So this Eve encounter will happen here. And of course, once we are done with that, we can go to this periapsis, in theory, and think about perhaps even a Moho encounter. Now, we're not on the right inclination necessarily for that. But if we were to set that as a target, what would that timing end up looking like? I mean, the inclination would be a little nutty. Yeah, we'd need to change our inclination for that. We could also attempt to... Well, at this point, we would just need the timing for further encounters with Eve, which would eventually happen here. So what we can do at this point is we can simply warp to here. Because we don't need to do anything at this point for this stage of this project anyway. There are no burns that are going to happen at Eve. We're just going to head in here, and we're almost at the correct angle for the sun shield to block the sun. Not quite. Okay. 20 days to go here. Hello, Eve. Okay, we don't need to get moved around or anything. This is completely fine. At this point, we can warp over to the periapsis. Thanks for the gravity assist, Eve. Eve lowering our periapsis nicely here. Okay, and now we can warp to our Eve escape, which is going to be, well, we can just go ahead and warp to, like, here. That'll be fine. Goodbye, Eve. Thanks for the assistance. And then ideally, we'd want to do it more. So one thing we could do, actually, is we could recircularize at this point. Well, what would the point of that be? I was thinking we would recircularize and then do another Eve encounter to drive down our periapsis. But that doesn't actually help all that much, I don't think. So let's just warp forward a little bit here until we are no longer in orbit of Eve. There we go. And we can see here we don't have an encounter with Eve anytime soon. That's not surprising to me. So I think what we're going to do for the sake of this particular stream here, which we don't have all day, so I think we're going to add a maneuver here. Unlike the Parker Solar Probe, which has been going for, like, years, I think that we're just going to set our inclination to be Moho. Moho inclination here. And try to gravity assist off of that as well, and then just get in close. So something kind of like this. That's going to be a 1200 meter per second burn, but we're actually not concerned about that. This is actually fine. We've got plenty to make that happen. Okay. So we'll try to do a gravity assist off of Moho as well. This is not the Parker Solar Probe flight profile, but this will be a lot easier. The Parker Solar Probe flight profile is crazy, for the record. And we're just going to warp a little bit forward. 2, 1, and 0. Okay. Relatively lengthy burn here, so we'll physics warp it. And let's just get our inclination matched to Moho, which is somewhere over here. I don't know where exactly, but it's somewhere over there. Okay, we'll come out of physics warp here. That's probably close enough. Yep, absolutely. So now we will look for an encounter with Moho. We'll bring this on down. That's a pretty hefty amount of delta V, but that's unsurprising. When you're this close to the sun, it gets tough. Okay, so we would be looking for an encounter like here. Kind of like this. But we need to fine-tune that encounter. Our resulting periapsis is not particularly different from our existing one, and that is because this is basically just a flyby. This is not, in fact, a good gravity assist. And the reason for that is because this encounter happens here, not at the periapsis. So I'm going to look for a different encounter here. One more up this way. So at the periapsis, we're probably going to have to add in an orbit here because I don't time my orbits. Okay. We want that encounter to be at the periapsis here, ideally. Can I move, please? Thank you. So we're going to need to bring this in a wee bit here. And try to time it so that the encounter is, well, realistically, that's much closer. In fact, cool. This is still basically a flyby at this point, and we'll need to fine-tune that. So we'll just change our inclination a little bit here. And bring it in slightly. Our inclination is too high now. Okay. Moho is not going to give us too much assistance here, of course, because there's not a ton of gravity on Moho. But how is that doing? that is lowering our apoapsis down below Eve's orbit. So that does help. That does save us a little bit of delta V. Probably not worth the inclination change, if I'm honest, but that is better. Let's see if we can bring this periapsis in at all, and I'd also like to... That's perhaps too much. Okay, we need to figure out what Moho's atmosphere characteristic is like. It doesn't have one. Okay, good to know. I wasn't sure if it had a trace atmosphere or not in KSP. It does not. Okay, so we could do something kind of like this. Now, it doesn't have a huge amount of gravity to help us, but like I said, that is lowering our apoapsis by approximately... Well, that's a pretty hefty amount, actually. A decent chunk. So from here, we'll probably just help ourselves at the periapsis for this particular flight profile. So let's just get flipped on around here. And let's warp over to that. That'll be about 400 days. Not too bad, all things considered. Considering that we just completely launched this thing blind. But we get a couple of gravity assists to lower our apoapsis there. That's always nice. And we get a nice flyby of Moho out of it, too. A pretty close flyby of Moho, I might add. This is 30 kilometers. So we'll get a nice, good view. Always good. So there we go right now. Now we need to add one more orbit in here. About another 200 days to go. Getting much closer. And it's starting to get somewhat toastier here at this point. That is, of course, what all these radiator panels are for. And the sun shield. Which I don't know that the sun shield actually works in KSP, and I don't know that we actually need the radiator panels as well, but those are components of, well, I didn't look up what each individual component of the probe was. I assumed that it was radiator panels up here. I don't know that for a fact. This was kind of a spur of the moment thing. But here we are. We're about ready for our burn. That's fantastic. We'll be able to activate these radiators eventually. I don't know. We should be able to run all of them simultaneously, right? I think. I don't know. We'll find out. And burning. Okay, so our periapsis is coming on down. And this isn't a huge gravity assist, but of course this is Moho we're talking about, so it's not expected to be absolutely huge. And we can see here it's not exactly at the periapsis. We probably could have timed it slightly better, but it's okay. It gets us a gravity assist, and that was the goal here. So this burn will be finished up in a few seconds. And this is going to bring us inside the orbit of Moho. So that's always exciting. $200 meters per second to go here. 150. 100. 50. 0.2 meters per second off. Probably good enough. That's quite far out, actually. I would like to bring that in, but we are going to thrust limit this down to 0.5%, because if that's 0.2 meters per second worth, we're going to need to thrust limit that. Okay, we actually need to flip around to prograde. I must have overshot it. Okay, let's bring that in. $22 kilometers? Sounds good to me. We're going to do a very close flyby here, and let's begin our warp. I'm going to unthrust limit this once we're out of warp, but this will do for now. Moho, here we come. Okay, there's Moho. Fantastic. We're going to warp a little bit closer here. There we go. Moho is a very toasty place. It's a great place to go if you need to, like, bake some bread or something. Moho is the place for you. It is quite an oven. So we're going to warp to about here. We're going to be passing very close to Moho. Very, very close. 22 kilometers. We could have gotten it a little closer, but that's 22 kilometers above sea level, and I'm not actually sure what the maximum height of features on Moho is. I think the wiki has that information, but I'm not sure if that information exists in-game. Not in here, anyway. Okay. Sounds good. So I don't know what the max height of physical features is on Moho. We could have brought that down a little bit. Eggs! Yes, eggs would be great for Moho. It'd be a great place to fry some eggs. Absolutely. You are exactly correct about that one. But this is a great gravity assist for us. We are saving a lot of fuel by having this gravity slow us down a bit. Cool. And we are ascending at this point. Thanks for the assist, Moho. I've not been to Moho in a very long time. I think the last time I went to Moho was in the solar system tour. Like, that was a very long time ago. Well, thanks for the assist, Moho. We are out of here. So let's go ahead and warp on away. Goodbye, Moho. And that is our ultimate destination. But I don't know how low we're actually going to be able to get here. We will run out of fuel at some point. The question is, what is that point? We'll find out. So we're just going to warp ahead until we are out of Moho's influence there. There we go. And at this point, I want to come around to the periapsis again, and we can drop this down. That is more than we've got. Okay. So this is about the delta V that we have here. Now there is a chance, technically, this is the delta V that we've got here. Now, there is a chance that we encounter Moho again and it continues to lower our periapsis and apoapsis here and lower us down. There's also a chance that we encounter Moho again and crash straight into it. It's just hard to say with the amount of information that we have right now. So, ultimately, I think this is about the closest we're going to get. Realistically, this is about the closest the Parker Solar Probe would have been able to get likely as well without the repeated gravity assists around Venus. So ultimately, I think that's a pretty decent way to do it there. But I'm not necessarily going to burn all of this the way it is right now. I definitely want to burn out all of this stage, but I want to leave a little bit of fuel in this thing, so that'll be fine. What is our power? Holy crap, that's a lot of power flow. These things normally produce like 8, for the record. Once we get back around to the periapsis, we'll take a look at that. We're currently at our apoapsis, so this is the furthest from the sun we're going to get. Solar panels are incredibly effective this close in, for obvious reasons. I almost made it to Moho one time, but crashed at the last second, so maybe you can find my eggs there if you want it. Maybe, but that sounds like they've been overcooked, so I'll pass on that. Okay. So we're going to start this burn here. I'm going to burn out the remainder of this tank. Helps if we unthrust limit. I'm going to burn out the remainder of this tank. We need to warp a little further. That's fine. I don't know that I'm going to burn all of this tank, though. I like to leave some fuel in the probes that I send out, just to be on the safe side. We probably could get additional gravity assists and things like that, and get this lower, but this is a very similar result to the Parker Solar Probe, with the exception of the repeated gravity assist constantly lowering the periapsis, which is just so clever. Okay. So we'll burn all of this out here and then get ourselves a little bit of distance. There we go. Fantastic. It may also be 150 years old now, but we're not going to talk about why. Oh boy. 150 years in KSP is a long time. Of course, we've been at this for 3 years, so there's that. But at this point, we can see this is our orbit here. And we could continue to lower it. And I'm going to. We're going to lower it a little bit. Boy, that's loud. These types of engines always are. But I'll just zoom out a bit. And yeah, you can see this isn't moving by a huge amount. We'll physics warp, and I'll leave like 25% fuel here. Your save lasted 150 years before it was lost to time for some strange reason. Was that reason Windows bricking your install and making you completely wipe your drive and lose your save? Because that's happened to me like 4 times in the past couple years. I'm getting tired of Windows updates bricking my Windows install. Very irritating. So yeah, we'll leave around 25% fuel in here, just for reasons. I like to leave fuel in my probes just in case. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this has gone. We're not super close, but I never really expected to get, mega close to the sun. That takes so much delta V to lower your periapsis that much. It's insane. Like, just look at how fast we're moving relative to the sun right now. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. We're actually not at retrograde, but that's fine. So we'll leave a little bit here. I think this is good. And we'll call that just fine. We'll park this at radial in so that our sun shield is oriented correctly. And of course, if we were to warp, it wouldn't hold radial in. But this would be the way to go. So currently, look at that. Energy flow of 50. That's insane. Let's turn on our radiators. Not that I think they're actually all that helpful right now, but here we go. I just want to see what that does. Okay, is that all of them? Yes. Cool. And we're fine on electric charge. 50 electric power flow. That is insane. Well, there we have it. One Parker Solar Probe that is near-ish to the sun, but without the repeated attempts at gravitational assistance from Eve. It's going to be a little bit complicated to get that too much lower. So I think that'll be good. I'm reasonably content with that, and that seems like a decent stopping point for today, too. So I think I'm going to stop there for right now, and thank you very much for watching this. I'm definitely interested in figuring out how I want to build a James Webb Space Telescope. The unfortunate thing about that is that KSP doesn't simulate Lagrange points. So we're not actually able to put it into the L2 Lagrange point, which makes me sad, but here we are. At any rate, I think I'm going to stop here for today, and tomorrow we may think about doing that James Webb build. That's definitely intriguing to me, but we're not going to be able to put it in a Lagrange. That's just the way it is. But you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this stream possible, including Casserole, Sigma162, JJ Gamer, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Video Games Are Not Real, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.